Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining the webinar today. My name is Tori Jaffa, and I'm the Marketing and Events Officer at Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand. Our webinar today is on IT management for people with no technical background and is presented by Gordon Tan, the Managing Director of R&G Technologies. R&G Technologies is an IT support and cloud consulting firm and is also one of our amazing discount partners. Now, we'll have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. So if you do have a question, please feel free to type it into the question box, but we will leave them all till the end. I'll now hand it over to Gordon. All yours, Gordon.
Thank you very much, Tori. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gordon Tan from R&G Technologies, and thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me today to talk about IT management. This webinar has really been geared towards people who are often given responsibilities associated with IT, however, do not necessarily have a background in IT. Oftentimes this is because they've been someone that's been involved in the finance side of the business, or someone who is acting as kind of an IT point of contact. And in our experience, we've found that sometimes these people feel like they're thrown a little bit in the deep end. And so really what we're trying to do today was give you a little bit more insight into how to better manage that for better outcomes for the organization. I'll just start by telling you a couple of things very quickly about R&G. We're as Tori mentioned, an IT consulting company. We operate in Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne. We have a very strong relationship with Connecting Up. We are one of their discount partners, and we also co-present their Technology Leadership Academy, which, if you haven't done it, is a fantastic foray into how to prepare and develop an IT strategy, particular for smaller organizations. It does add a lot of value. It's an 8-week online program, and we participate in that. We also have a specialization in the not-for-profit sector. Predominantly all of our clients are in that space, and we work with organizations right from your very small 5, 10 staff type organizations right through to 200, 300, 400 seat type organizations as well. So to touch on a little bit about what we're going to go through today, there's some key fundamentals that we would like to cover off. The first is, let's say you've been put into this role, and you're now having to start that IT relationship. Or how do you effectively build the correct relationship with your IT partner? From there, coming out of that, it's how do you manage kind of your business as usual, your day-to-day IT responsibilities, and how to get the best value out of the time that you're spending, and how do you hold the IT partner to account. We're going to talk a little bit about IT service management, which is really the framework by which a lot of larger organizations, how they run their IT, and how we can potentially apply some of that into a smaller organization to get better outcomes. And finally, industry benchmarks. So how does what you're receiving either internally from an internal IT team or externally from your IT partner, how does that compare against others in the industry? And that kind of gives you a barometer when you're trying to hold your IT provider accountable. The final thing is really just to touch on is we're going to give a couple of free tools away that are going to help you more effectively manage your IT, and we've bundled that into a toolkit, which we'll speak about towards the end. So when you first are approached about becoming that IT coordinator, manager, IT contact, there's fundamentally 3 problems that we've observed as we've worked with these people, and after speaking to these people and asking them about their challenges. The first and probably the most common one is that you often get stuck simply acting as a traffic controller, and you're not really adding any value. So you may be passing jobs or IT requests between an IT partner and the rest of your organization as a single point of contact, but you kind of feel like you're just flicking requests back and forth, forwarding emails back and forth, and not really adding much value there overall. Further on to this, there's a lot of people are unsure about how to actually hold the IT provider accountable. So given that you've just been thrust these responsibilities, how best can you work with them to hold them to account for the things that matter. And finally, how do you actually build a successful partnership? So how do you build that relationship where it's win-win for both sides and you're getting better outcomes for the organization as well? So the first thing we wanted to touch on is how you start that effective relationship with your IT partner. This business, we say in our company anyway, we say that, we're a people business first and a technology company second, and most IT providers will understand that. It's all about people, and therefore the type of relationship that you have will often reflect the results that the organization is seeing from an IT perspective. So the first thing that you really want to do with your IT partner is, and this can still apply if you've had a relationship for quite a while, you can still go through this process and kind of rehash this. But the first thing you really need to do is understand and set the expectations that are associated with the services that you're getting. So typically when you engage an IT company, someone will come in and you will talk to them about the type of services and the type of systems that you have, and if you're a bit larger organization, you will sign up for some sort of service agreement. If you're a bit smaller, maybe you're paying by the hour for your support, or maybe you have an internal IT team, and a lot of these concepts can still apply if you've got an internal IT department. But the first thing you really need to do is to set the boundaries of that relationship. And that really stems from these 5 key points here. And it's really not just a one-way process. So you're not just trying to understand what their expectations are, but you're also trying to set your expectations with them. The first and obviously the most apparent would be to set expectations around response times. So what are the appropriate response times for appropriate types of requests? If it's a critical job, are they going to respond within 1 hour, 4 hours, 10 hours, 3 days? What is your expectation, and also what is their expectation about how fast they're going to respond to that? System uptime is obviously about the expectations around how available or how reliable the system's going to be. Is it going to be, are they going to give you any guarantees around system uptime? If not, why not? Maybe they will recommend that you have to do certain things so that they can give you those guarantees, but that will often come in some form of, percentage. So it might be, 95% guaranteed system uptime or something like that. Job turnarounds. So job turnarounds is really when I am giving you a particular job to do, what is my expectation, and what is your expectation around how fast that's going to come back and be completed for me? Now that's sometimes a little bit harder to nut out, because the variable nature of IT means that you're never going to be able to accurately predict how long a job's going to take. But as an example, specific situations where job turnarounds would apply are things like what we would call service requests. I'm going to add a new user. I'm going to redirect someone's email. What are the appropriate expectations around how quickly those jobs are going to get turned around? The final 2 things are really about what's included and excluded as part of a service that you may be receiving. So a service level agreement, or an SLA, is actually a kind of a contracted framework by which the IT provider will tell you what their expectations are, and you need to make sure that your expectations are aligned with that. Inclusions and exclusions, obviously there's going to be certain things that are included as part of the contract and certain things that are not. And it's important that you both sit down and agree to what those are at the beginning of the relationship or at the starting of a new relationship. That way it just kind of clears up all of those loose ends where you might be getting a bill for something and not be sure why you've gotten billed, or maybe you've called through after hours and received a bill, and those little shocks, it removes all those kind of little grey areas and keeps everyone on the same page. So once you've sat down with them and built that foundation of a win-win relationship, the next thing to really do is to understand your partner's perspective and where you can actually get alignment with them. So obviously every IT provider worth their salt is passionate about providing great customer service. The other almost competing priority that they have is actually efficiency. And those things are kind of balanced if you think about it like scales. If you want to deliver better service, sometimes you have to sacrifice a little bit of efficiency. You have to give more to improve service levels. But the thing to understand is that if you're engaged in a fixed fee type of arrangement with an IT provider, that is, you agree on a fixed amount of money and they give you unlimited support for a particular monthly fee, then you are both actually aligned in what you're wanting to achieve, because the more problems that you have, the less money the IT provider makes, because he's obviously having to commit more and more resources to fix your problems. So by understanding that you're both sharing the same, or you're both desiring the same outcome, you can work together in a win-win relationship to achieve the goals that you want. Obviously, as the IT contact or the IT person within your organization, your objective is to have as few problems as possible. And so framing that and working with the IT partner on reducing those problems to not only ensure that you're getting the best outcomes for the organization, but the IT partner is also getting efficiency outcomes for their organization, will mean that you're working more in a win-win fashion, which is very, very important. Just like any relationship as well, it's important that you invest in face-to-face interaction. Again, being a people business, sometimes we lose sight of the fact that the people that you're talking to on the other end of the line are often people very much like ourselves, and this goes both ways. So what we encourage is to have face-to-face interactions at least every quarter. That allows you to continue to build that human relationship with people. It also gives you an opportunity to kind of highlight any potential service-related issues or plan moving forward for any strategic initiatives that you might have. We also recommend, if possible, that you actually go out at least once a year to your IT provider's office. The reason being, it again puts a face to the potential account with the IT company, as well as that it gives you much better opportunity to meet a number of different people who may be servicing you. And it's creating that human element and building upon the foundations that you've set and defining those expectations and seeing things as win-win that is going to give you that really that fantastic relationship where you're getting great outcomes for the organization. So that's from a relationship standpoint, how best to address, building that with an IT partner and an IT contact within an organization. Moving on to how to manage your IT responsibilities. So you're going to have some things that are going to be happening on a daily basis with the IT. A lot of times that's going to be people potentially coming to you with issues, and maybe you're sending those on to the IT partner, or you're screening those initially to try to vet whether they should go to the IT partner. Various things like that. And so these are really some important mechanisms by which you're going to better manage your responsibilities. Because again, you're not really given a guide as to how to do it. You're just kind of expected to handle it. And oftentimes it's a little bit of just feeling around in the dark. And this will give you a much better framework for how to manage moving forward. The first thing that you need to do is, obviously in line with setting these expectations, is you need to go back through and understand what's contracted and the service level agreements that are associated with whatever services you're consuming. A lot of this has been developed on the assumption that you have an ongoing relationship with an IT provider and you've signed some sort of agreement. That agreement might be a fixed fee, all-inclusive, unlimited support kind of agreement. It could be a by-the-hour ad hoc, call as you need agreement. But there's some basis for that that's signed, and there's an ongoing relationship there. The first thing you really need to do is to review that document so that you, again, can set those expectations on both sides. These are the typical things that will be covered as part of that agreement that you should be looking at. The first thing is this concept of a service level agreement, or an SLA. What an SLA is, again, is really about defining what are the response times in terms of the time at which we have to come back to you in a suitable fashion. And that will generally be broken down via priority. So as an example, priority 1 job will be maybe a critical job. The response time, the guaranteed response time, or the SLA, might be within 1 hour. That information will all be defined in that service level agreement. It's important to note the difference between response times and turnaround times when you're looking through this agreement. So response times are how quickly a IT partner has to respond to you to say that they've started the job. Turnaround time is obviously about when the job is actually completed. Turnaround times are included for things that can be turned around in a systematic fashion. As an example, again, things like new user creations, email forwards and that sort of thing. But they're often not defined for problems that come up, because the problem may take 2 days to solve or 3 hours. It's really quite variable. But you should be looking at that, and that will give you a good understanding of your SLA. The next thing that's covered under most agreements is what's called a service catalog. A service catalog is a list of the services or what specific inclusions and exclusions are included as part of whatever agreement that you have with the provider. That may include things like monitoring, it may include things like reporting, or it may simply include things like a dedicated IT engineer. But having a look through that service catalog and making sure it's aligned with your expectations and raising anything that is out of line with your expectations will just ensure that the relationship starts on the right foot. Coverage is also another one. Coverage is obviously the associated hours of operation, and that kind of flows into, what are you going to get billed for versus what are you not going to get billed for. So if someone calls through at 5:30, are you going to be getting billed for that as an overtime, on an overtime rate, or is that going to be handled as part of the agreement? Those are all the sorts of things that you should be looking at as part of the agreement. Once you've done that and you've got that understanding, you have spoken to the provider and aligned your expectations with theirs and everyone's on the same page. The next thing that you can actually do is to really streamline and improve the way that you're managing the kind of daily activity, is to understand and implement this concept of IT service management. IT service management, otherwise known as ITSM, is it's a global framework for best practice IT service delivery. I know that's a bit of a mouthful, but what it basically is it's the standard and a series of processes that are used by the vast majority of large organizations to ensure a reliable, robust delivery of services in the IT space. So in ITSM, there's really 4 key processes that are extremely important that you can actually take away, apply into your organization. And the advantage that you're going to have is your IT partner, there is extremely high probability they will understand or have an existing processes for this in place. If not, they will most likely understand what you're talking about when you start talking about ITSM. For those people that know of ITIL, ITSM is actually the ITIL rebranded, so it's the newer version of ITIL. The 4 processes that are very important for an organization, particularly small, medium, and large organizations, are listed here. Incident management, problem management, change management, and knowledge management. If you, on some level, implement these systems and processes into your IT management, you will get a much more reliable, much more effective service delivery mechanism within your organization, and you'll start to get better outcomes overall, and you'll definitely start to see that improve. So we'll just go through each of these and explain, and then we'll talk about how you actually go about implementing some of these within your organization. The first is incident management. Incident management is pretty simple, and most people, once I explain it, will realize that they already have incident management. What incident management basically is when an issue comes through or comes through from your staff, your objective is, or your IT provider's objective is to resolve that issue and resolve it as quickly as possible. So any type of issue that comes through is generally classed as an incident, and most IT help desks resolve incidents well. So, if someone's having a computer problem, maybe the quickest solution to get them up and running is to reboot that computer. And maybe that's what you do or your IT provider does. And they go through, reboot the computer, and it fixes the issue. So incident management is pretty straightforward. It's kind of your typical firefighting. Problem management is a separate process that occurs when the same incident happens more than once. So what that basically means is, if someone calls you and says, my computer's broken, and your IT provider or yourself, you advise them to reboot the computer, the problem goes away, but then in 3 days' time, the problem comes back again, or the incident, I should say, comes back again. It's now classified as a problem, and there's a separate process called problem management, otherwise known as root cause analysis, which needs to happen to ensure that whatever systemic issue is causing this issue to occur is fixed at a top level. So problem management needs to be a separate process. Often problem management is done by more senior engineers where there is more investigation required. So again, the distinction between incident management and problem management: incident is a one-off issue. Problem management is the same incident happening more than once. And understanding this distinction is going to really help you to drive the types of actions that you need within your organization to get things resolved. If you have poor problem management process within your organization, you will be experiencing things like the same issue reoccurring over and over and over again. Or you're having to call the IT partner to advise them that yes, the same issue is occurring, this printer is having the same problem. That shows or highlights poor problem management, either poor problem management classification or poor problem management processes that are driven in the back end. But we'll talk a little bit more again about how to hold your IT provider accountable for problem management, even if they don't have the necessary processes in place internally to manage that. The final two ITSM processes that are very important are, the third is change management. Change management is processes that are designed to ensure that whatever changes are being made to the environment have the potential effects considered. So, this really comes down to governance and managing risk. You can't have what you ideally want is you want all of the potential issues and concerns to be considered, and also have an effective rollback plan in place if a change goes wrong. So having effective change management is really about holding your IT provider accountable to giving you that information, and it really needs to come through in a written format. You can really do change management at varying levels, but at a minimum, what needs to happen is you need to set a change management process in place for your IT provider or for your internal IT team. There needs to be a change advisory authority or a change advisory board. That person needs to be on within your organization to approve the change. It's probably going to be yourself in the scenario. But you need to be asking three things. What's going to change? So what change are they trying to make? What are the potential effects of that change? And what is going to happen? How are we going to revert if there's going to be problems that occur? How are we going to roll back? And this needs to be done for any perceived major change within the environment. If maintenance needs to be done over a weekend, look, generally speaking, that's not change management. If they're reconfiguring your backups, that is change management. If they are installing some new software, that is definitely change management. And so you need to enforce those processes. Now, as part of the toolkit, we'll give you a change management form, but realistically, even having change management in an email for a small organization is important, and it's important to set the expectation that that's what you desire with your IT partner at the beginning of the relationship. The final component of ITSM that will make a much more robust and reliable service delivery framework is this concept of knowledge management. Knowledge management is all the processes that are designed to capture the information that you need in a format that is easily transferable between different potential partners or IT partners that you might have. So as an example, knowledge management is about ensuring that they have the appropriate checklists in place. As an example, when a new user is created, do they have the appropriate processes and checklists in place to ensure that that gets done properly? Similarly with workstations, when a workstation is prepped, are there appropriate checklists in place that have that information readily available, and are you reviewing that information? Knowledge management is about how that information is captured, and it ensures that your IT partner has all the information they need. What that will mean is you will get a much more consistent, reliable level of service. Instead of situations where they create a new user, and then you have to call up again because they missed this and they missed that. Having effective knowledge management and having those effective checklists in place means that that won't happen. You'll get a much more reliable level of service. So that's knowledge management. So why ITSM? Well, I'm hoping it's become a little bit more apparent, but IT service management as a framework, the first thing it does is it allows you to communicate in the same language to your IT partner. So as an example, with our clients, they're trained to say, to talk in the language that makes sense to an engineer who might be working on our side. So, highlighting the fact that no, this isn't an incident. I would like to make this problem management. Even communicating in that way ensures that the appropriate processes are then triggered and the appropriate people are looking at those issues so that you're not having, so you can really streamline your service delivery in that way. ITSM is really about improving the consistency of your support so that it's repeatable and you're not having to rehash. It allows you to resolve issues faster because you're now not having to bounce around multiple people to get things done, or having the same issue occurring over and over again. And finally, it's reducing the risk for your organization. So you're just putting better governance processes in place and you have better documentation, which ensures that, the risks to the organization are significantly reduced. So that's the broad understanding of ITSM, but how can you actually go about implementing that at a very basic level? And let's be realistic, with ITSM and with ITIL, anyone that's specialized in that area will tell you that you can literally drown in paper forms and paperwork to make simple changes. So we don't want to do that. We want to keep things lean, but we want to take the important concepts that we've got in ITSM and actually apply them at a very, very basic level within the organization so that we can improve the accountability and improve the efficiency. Well, the way that you do that at a very basic level is you keep a record of the issues. You keep two separate records. The first set of records that you keep is for incidents. So anytime someone comes through and gives you a particular issue that they want looked at, it will be recorded as an incident. Now, we'll give you some of these templates that you can use, again, free as part of this webinar, so don't worry about having to create your own. But you'll have one tab for incidents, and then you'll have another tab for problems. The reason why you separate them is because it allows you to, again, hold your IT partner to account, and it's also fantastic from a reporting standpoint as well, reporting to management, to give them some perspective on where things are at and what's happening at the moment. So by separating those problems and incidents, it also allows you to see which jobs are still outstanding requiring further work versus the jobs that are just purely transactional, that are just one-off fixes, they got fixed and they're done. And it allows you to keep that running list, again, which is very, very useful when you actually go and have those conversations with your IT partner. We've spoken about the fact that you can circulate that. It gives your direct managers and other department heads and people within your organization clarity on what issues are still occurring at a root cause level that your IT partner is still trying to fix. Something that stands out to me at the moment is one of our clients at the moment is having a significant amount of printing issues relating to Citrix, which is a technology that is used for multi-site organizations. And they're having a number of different people at different offices experience this printer issue, which is the printing is quite slow. If we were to just go around and fix each of those issues in isolation, that wouldn't fix the root cause of the issue. And the department heads in each of the departments need to be aware of what's going on. In this scenario, this is really an appropriate way for you to circulate information and say, look, we are aware it's a root cause problem. We are aware it's a problem. It is requiring root cause analysis. We are working on it, and this is where it's kind of up to. So it just improves the level of visibility and transparency across the organization. Keeping that register will allow you to keep track of what's going on and what things require further work, what things you need to press to get resolved, and what things are just transactional. The other thing that you want to be doing is ensuring that you're getting incident reports for any major incidents that are occurring. So let's say a server goes down or you experience some downtime. It's extremely important that you request a formal incident report. And again, we'll give you this template as part of the toolkit. You can either pass it back to your IT department or your IT provider, or they may have their own. But it's extremely important, and the main reason why it's important is because it allows you to, well, there's a few different reasons, but the one that's most important in my opinion is it enforces a constant improvement process. So the incident report itself should cover off on really 4 key things. What happened? What was the cause of the issue? How it was fixed? And most importantly, what is in place to stop it happening again? So by formalizing that into a reporting style, it really does ensure that any of these major incidents that are occurring, there are effective measures put in place to ensure that that doesn't happen again. It's also a formal way of tracking major incidents. It's extremely useful, to be able to pass this type of information or circulate it to management or department heads. Sometimes, it will be 6 months later, and having the ability to go back into your incident reports and pull up a report from 6 months ago where you remember you had a server outage but you can't remember why, that's going to be quite useful, and it can be reviewed at a later date. So there is a significant amount of value in ensuring that you're collecting that sort of information from your IT partner. Probably the final thing that's going to ensure that you have that efficient and effective relationship with your IT partner now that you've got a little bit more information is this concept of a quarterly meeting. So look, for smaller organizations, if you've got 3 or 4 or 5 people, you can do that. You can extend that out. It doesn't need to be quarterly. Maybe it's every 6 months or every 12 months. But if you're 20 staff plus, the truth of it is someone should be having this quarterly meeting with your IT partner. The way that would work is it's a great opportunity to be able to cover off on current issues, to cover off on problem management items and how they've progressed. If they haven't progressed, it's a great opportunity for you to put some momentum behind that. It's an opportunity to review any service-related issues that you've had to build the relationship with the IT partner. And as well as that, it's a great opportunity to talk strategically about where the organization is going and getting them to be a little bit more proactive about, what things they should be recommending to ensure that your network is running at optimal efficiency. Again, as part of the toolkit, we're including an agenda. Your IT partner may already have one. It's totally up to you. The most important thing is to actually have the meeting. And armed with that new knowledge that you're going to have, it's just going to make things a whole lot easier, and it's going to be a whole lot more effective for making sure that the network is running in the way that it should. So those 5 things are really at the crux of, making this IT work in a simplistic format, but making it work in a way that is efficient and reliable. But you also want to hold your IT partner accountable. And you want to do that in a way, and it's often hard if you don't have experience in IT because you don't really know what's good and what's bad. And so what we wanted to share with you was some industry benchmarks that you can use to compare against the level of performance that you're currently getting from your IT partner or your internal IT team, and you can use that as a starting point of a discussion to hold them accountable. So we're going to start off by talking about IT spend. Now this is actually from Connecting Up. Connecting Up did a fantastic survey of significant, I can't remember the exact number, but it was many hundred not-for-profit organizations in Australia. And what they found was that on average 5% of a not-for-profit organization's total operating expenditure should be allocated to IT. If you're spending more than that, that's a point of discussion. If you're spending less than that, that's something that can be communicated to management or the board to potentially open up some additional spending in technology. But it's a way by which you're able to hold your IT provider accountable. You'll see in this list here, this is actually how that 5% is actually split up. A lot of time, this is 41% is actually spent on salaries, so maybe you have an internal IT team, so 41% of that 5% may be going to salaries. 16% may be going to, on average, your external IT support company, or that mix might change depending on if you've got some sort of complete outsourced agreement and whatnot. Those two might be combined together. But that gives you some insight into what you should be spending, and it's a good place to start from a discussion standpoint. The second thing is client satisfaction. So the easiest way to determine whether or not you're getting perceived comparable good service in relation to what else is out in the market is to send a survey out to your users and get them to rate it across these key areas. Promptness, which is response times; accuracy, which is attention to detail; partnership, which is a feeling of working together as one organization; and advice is obviously about ongoing learning and education. If you send this out, survey out, and ask your staff to rate it out of 10, you're going to get back some results. These are the results for the average of, I think it's about 400 IT providers in Australia and the US. Again, this is useful from an accountability standpoint, and it gives you some sort of ability or a barometer so you can see how your performance or their performance is versus the rest of the market. And if you're not getting good performance, that gives you the ability to, again, apply some pressure or highlight this to them in a way to figure out how you're going to move forward and how you're going to improve that moving forward. So it's a very useful tool to really, if you're needing them to pick up their game in terms of service, this is a great way to do it. Further to this, there's some very specific statistics around service delivery, which might be of interest to people. This requires a little bit more analysis. So if you're a larger organization, maybe you're going to go to this much trouble. If you're smaller, maybe you're just going to stick to, the previous the survey that we just spoke about. But with incident management, on average, these were benchmarks obtained on the internet from multiple sources, but most of it's from a company called Pink Elephant, which does ITSM benchmarking across, I think it's over 1,000 IT departments and and not-for-profit organizations. Incident management, first contact resolution at 74%. What this basically means is that when someone calls up with an incident, an issue, 74% of the time it's resolved on the first contact. That's an interesting one if you're able to collect those statistics, or you're able to ask your IT partner to report on those statistics to see whether their team is actually resolving things in a timely fashion, or they're having to take multiple calls or follow-ups to resolve things. If that's the case, sometimes it's a knowledge management issue. So sometimes it's that they don't have the necessary information, or the staff are not trained, or there's no checklists. Those types of things usually indicate poor knowledge management, which you can then assist working through with them. Problem management. An average of 0.03 problems per full-time employee per month. What that basically means is if you've got, and I'll just bring up my calculator, I hope you don't mind, my maths isn't that good, but if you've got, let's say you've got 20 staff, well then you would say, or let's say 30 staff multiplied by 0.03, you'd be expecting to have one problem management issue a month, new problem management issue a month. So if you're having more than that, it obviously flags something for you. If you're having less than that, it also flags something for you. If you're having less than it flags that maybe you're not identifying problem management effectively. But that gives you some sort of basis for how to determine how many problems you should be having versus incidents. So if you've got 150 staff, you're probably getting 4 to 5 new problems every month, specific problem management issues every month. Average incident response time, so this is talking about response times. The average is 5 hours, 22 minutes. That's just right across the board. In my opinion, it's a little bit of the metric is hard to use because, there's varying classification of incidents. So as an example, it might be a priority 1 or a critical incident, or there might be, priority 4 incidents, which, the SLA on them is 2 days. But what this data says is that on average, all of the jobs that you're logging on average should get resolved same day or within one 24-hour period. Similarly, for any critical issues, it's responded to within 25 minutes. It's again useful data to go back and hold your IT provider accountable if you're not getting that. If you're getting better than that, fantastic. And you probably can celebrate that with them a little bit as well. So those are some useful service delivery metrics, again, probably for the more advanced or larger organizations to use. A lot of organizations are using managed services. So managed services is basically this concept of a fixed fee, all-inclusive, unlimited support type of agreement. And so we've been able to give you some insight into what potentially the dollars look like in terms of what you should be spending on managed services. Again, useful from an accountability standpoint or in those discussions when you're negotiating contracts with your IT partner. So Kaseya, they're a software provider that specializes in that IT provider space. They surveyed 700 IT providers like R&G, and they came up with these benchmarks. Now, bear in mind these are in US dollars, so you have to do the conversion on them. So Asia Pacific, which is where we are, if your IT partner splits their service rates, so level 1, level 2, level 3, this is what you would expect to pay. I think most or the vast majority of Australian IT providers work off one rate, and so I would be looking at this rate here, this $132 level 3 rate. Obviously, you'd have to do a bit of an adjustment for the US dollar, so that would probably be around the $150 an hour mark for just your typical support. Bear in mind this is average, so there might be higher, there might be less, but that's a good guideline for an average hourly rate. This is probably more interesting for people that are actually in a contract at the moment. What we're looking at here is, how much you're charging per user per month for the contract. You'll see that 65% of all providers charge between $50 to $150 per user per month. So as an example, if you have 30 users and you took the middle, which is 100, you'll be looking to pay about $3,000 a month. For that kind of all-inclusive fixed fee, unlimited with monitoring and reporting, etc., etc. Look, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't pay more than that if you're getting a premium service, and it doesn't mean that you can't pay less than that if you're happy to accept that maybe the service levels are not going to be, at that kind of upper echelon. But that gives you a good baseline again for how to understand your costs and what your IT partner is charging you at the moment. So that's pretty much it on the IT industry benchmarks. The only other thing that we wanted to cover off was some free tools that we could potentially give you that will help make your job a little bit easier. It is tough sometimes and there is a lot going on. So we've already got all these templates, so we thought, look, why not? We can send them through to you. We've bundled them into what we're calling an IT management toolkit. It's basically just a whole bunch of the templates that we've touched on as part of this presentation. And they can be useful, they can be changed. Feel free to send them to whoever you need to send them through. If you want to rebadge them and send them to your IT provider, more than happy to do that. Alternatively, if you have an IT team, happy for them to change it however they see fit as well. But this will give you a good baseline for having some basic tools. They're not complex. Most of them are Word or Excel documents, but some basic tools that are just going to allow you to better manage that kind of day-to-day IT management, even though you may not necessarily have had experience with it in the past. To get a copy of this, just email me at my email address here, and I'll be more than happy to send that across to you this afternoon. And look, that pretty much concludes our the content from our presentation today. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope it's been of value. And I believe we're going to open up the floor for any questions and answers. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that anyone has. I'll do my best anyway. So I'll pass over to Tori, I think.
We actually don't have any questions right now, but I'm sure that's because you've gone into depth pretty well with everything. But I'll just let people have a couple of minutes to just think about any last questions they may have. Is there any last words you'd like to say in regards to, in regards to your presentation?
Sure, no worries. Look, no, the main thing is, we definitely do understand, and we have highlighted that, people that are given these responsibilities that haven't had the necessary training sometimes do end up feeling a little bit like a traffic controller. And, from our point of view, we think that you can definitely add a lot more value, even just going through these very basic steps and using these templates. It'll give you better outcomes. It'll also work much easier for the IT company as well. So it's kind of a win-win scenario, and that's why we're very happy to share that information out into the industry and hopefully improve outcomes for everyone.
We do have a couple of questions that have come through. Lindy asks, do you think that a backup service should be included as a part of the monthly retainer? If not, what rate would be acceptable?
Oh, okay. Look, fundamentally, with the SLA arrangements and the managed service arrangements they're often bundled together. So it is not that common, but it is, I'd say probably 10% of people, IT companies, would bundle that sort of thing into the agreement. To give you an idea about how it's costed, usually what will happen is, just to go back, I'm sorry, usually what will happen is the IT provider will calculate a per user fee. Even if you don't see that, they'll be working off a per user fee. So it'll range from $50 a user a month to $150 a user a month. Generally speaking, a good rule of thumb for an organization less than maybe 50 staff is to go off that $100 a month. And whatever the backup fee will cost, they'll just add that on the top. Depending on how much data you have, it will dictate the cost of the backup. But to give you an idea, you're probably paying in the vicinity of 25 cents, 30 cents per gig. So, if you've got, again, you'll have to forgive me, I'll use my calculator. If you've got, 200 gig, you're probably paying $60 a month or something like that for backup. But remote backup services these days are quite cheap. So the cost of delivering those is going down quite dramatically, and you'll see that continue as time goes on as well.
Great. I've got a question here from Lauren. We keep asking for roaming profiles. Our IT company resists. Why do you think they do this?
Okay, so it depends there's different, again, it may come down to the communication. So there are different types of profiles. What you're probably trying to achieve, if you're saying roaming profiles, is the ability to go to any workstation, log on, and have all of your, your My Documents, your desktop, your applications follow you. But there's actually also a technology called roaming profiles that exists and existed and was much more common 5 years ago, and does, to be honest, pose a problem for most IT providers, because it slows down people when they log in and all that sort of thing. So roaming profiles, the technical definition is when you log in, it downloads your whole profile from the server and does all this X, Y, and Z stuff. That's not your IT partners. Probably when they're saying they're hesitant, it's probably because they're thinking of that. There's a technology, it's newer, it's built into Windows, so it's not any different. It's called redirected profiles. Redirected profiles gives you the same result as the end user, the ability to log on to multiple machines and have your stuff follow you, but it actually is a much improved model. So it actually doesn't download the profile, it just links to the profile from your desktop. So without getting into too much technical detail, it's a lot more seamless and a lot better. So potentially asking your IT partner to do redirected profiles will be better. They may not be aware that that exists, but there shouldn't be any other reason why they shouldn't want to implement that, in my opinion.
Toby asks, is there a good site that can be used for reading up on ITSM principles?
Look, it's very, very common. So there's actually a number of courses that you can take. It used to be called ITIL, ITIL. Now it's called ITSM. I would just Google and have a look if you're interested. Have a quick Google. There's online courses that you can take for an understanding of ITSM. There's actually certifications. I don't know any off the top of my head, but I know that there's a lot of resources out there for it, and I know some of these online courses are actually quite cheap. So I know that we send our guys to a couple of those courses, and if you'd like me to find the ones, you can email me and I'll flick those across to you if you like.
And Laura is wondering if you have any benchmarks for hosted server costs.
Hosted server costs. Okay, so what I would recommend is Connecting Up. Shameless plug for Connecting Up here. Have some hosting through what's called Connecting Up IaaS. That's actually in conjunction with us. We're working with them on that. But the pricing is actually online, so you can actually go and compare your current pricing to the Connecting Up discount pricing and see how that looks. If you can't find that, just Google Connecting Up IaaS. But if you can't find that, email me and I'll send you across the pricing there, and that will give you some basis for comparing how much you're currently spending.
And Alan asks, what is your view about level of user access on workstations? Should users have admin rights or not?
No, so you don't want to be giving users admin rights to the workstations themselves. The reason being is it allows them to install whatever applications they would like. That's a governance issue and a risk for the organization. It also, as you get bigger, it kind of exponentially increases the complexity of what you're managing. So you really want to be focused on standardizing everything, making everyone use the same thing. And the more that you give people the flexibility to install, iTunes and Spotify, and then, install the camera application that they have, and, cute PDF because they don't like the normal PDF viewer, it actually gets a little bit out of control. So when you're smaller, it's okay. I still wouldn't recommend it, but definitely as you get bigger, you'll find that people will just stop giving people the ability to do that.
And Lauren asks, we are a small health not-for-profit using medical practice software. Would our situation add to our IT costs?
You're a small medical.
They're a small health not-for-profit using
Health
medical practice software. So would that add to their IT costs?
So yes, it would. I'm not sure what you're using, but we have a number of clients that use Medical Director, Genie, and that sort of thing, and it does increase the complexity of the environment, and therefore your support costs generally will be higher. However, again, you should be classifying effectively, so classifying what's incidents and what's problems. A lot of times, particularly with applications, things might just stay perpetually as incidents and just continuously float around and around and around and around, and no one's actually going and doing the root cause analysis. And that is actually the fundamental of the problem. So whilst your costs, yes, will be a little bit more expensive, they shouldn't be significantly higher. And if you're doing effective problem management, you should be able to keep that under control over the long term anyway.
And Joe asks, would it be reasonable to ask IT provider to provide support in the way of training at the time of an incident so that if that incident occurs again, they'll know or have knowledge on how to fix it?
Most definitely. So by definition, an incident isn't supposed to happen again. So an incident, if it happens more than once, it's technically a problem, and the resolution of a problem might be to implement or have some sort of training, but it is reasonable to ask, most definitely. I know a lot of IT contacts, they will, and look, that's win-win as well if you think about it. They will ask when something gets sorted, they'll ask, okay, how did that get fixed? And they will then do that because it's faster for the internal IT person to just do that, then call the IT partner and then get a 3-hour response and then wait, and et cetera, et cetera. So it actually works out better because the IT company gets the win of not receiving that call. So they should be quite open to helping you develop those skills. The main thing from your side of things is just to make sure when it's something that you're not just band-aiding an incident over and over again. You need to make sure that it's classified as problem management at some point so that it does get that root cause analysis if you're having that problem over and over. So that's just the distinction there. You may be helping them a little bit too much.
I've got a bit of a scenario from Edward. He's a little bit concerned. Before he came on board to where he is, they set up computer classrooms which had which were serviced by one provider. Now he's actually set up another lab that is made up of computers the size of cigarette packets. Therefore, the old servicer doesn't actually do any of the new computers. He's worried if something goes wrong, who does he need to go to as he bought those smaller ones from interstate?
Okay, so you have one IT partner supporting that initial classroom, and then you've gone and done one on your own and set up these little small little computers. Is that correct?
Yes.
Have I understand that correctly?
Yeah, so to speak to the current service guys, or would he go, what would he do for these new computers as the old service guys don't service them?
Yeah, look, I mean, that's always going to be the challenge of doing things outside of what they would deem their SLA or their what's covered under their agreement. Is you'll largely get left to your own devices there. look, in a classroom-based environment, I mean, I haven't had that much experience with that scenario myself, but we've set up a couple of training rooms. To be honest, a lot of the times those PCs are pretty much just, if you have an issue with them, you just replace it. You just buy another little cigarette-sized computer and just replace it. What I would be doing is I would be going to the current provider and probably just highlighting where you're at and seeing what you can come to as an arrangement. Again, that's going to be win-win for both sides. That would probably be my first port of call. I apologize, I can't really give you anything as concrete as I'd like, but yeah, generally speaking, depending on how mature your IT partner is, they will get kind of quite strict with what's included and what's not, because again, they've got that dual focus. They're looking at service, but they're also wanting to make things efficient. And the way that you make things efficient is you keep everything standardized. So when a customer goes and buys 50, machines that they don't have any experience with, that adds complexity. And so they're going to probably want to charge you a little bit more to manage those now that, because it's outside of their standard. Yeah, I hope that helps. I'm happy to talk about that with you more if you want to take that offline as well, Edward.
Corey asks, can you talk about subscription models, cloud subscriptions like online backup, antivirus updates for firewalls, wireless networks, network management subscriptions that they must mark up the subscription cost for?
Could you repeat the last part of that question? That they must mark up the subscription for?
So he said, surely they must mark up the subscription cost.
Right. Okay. Cool. Yes. So with those types of services, typically, and this is again typical margin. This isn't not everyone's going to bill the same way. But if you're talking about average, they're probably marking it up 30%. Whatever subscription costs that they're receiving, roughly 30%. Generally speaking, those are purchased. If you're an IT provider, you generally have kind of wholesale relationships with certain vendors for that sort of thing. So as an example, with backup for us, we use a particular backup provider called GFI. We white label that service and we add some value around it, but we mark that up, I think, 30% and pass that on to the customer. So in that scenario, that's probably the margin that you're looking at, and they're probably adding enough value to justify that margin, as long as it's not just a straight white label. Because you've got to remember that they're also probably doing things in the middle. They're probably monitoring it. They're probably providing support on it for you as well, and there's other costs associated with delivering those services. So yeah. That's generally how those things are sold within our industry.
Thanks. Pardon me. Thanks, Gordon. We have a few more questions to go on, only about 3 minutes, so we'll try squeeze them in. Jennifer asks, what is your view on
no worries.
what is your view on using a cloud-based system? For example, have all files in the cloud, or have some on the cloud and balance on the server in the office?
Jennifer, it depends on your situation. If you're a small not-for-profit, I would definitely recommend, if you're sub 10 and you don't have any without having your specific requirements, I would probably say it makes more sense. A lot of smaller organizations are already doing that. If you're larger, there's just other considerations. So, sometimes it's not possible. Yes, you can move your files, but you still have your applications that you use, and therefore those can't move. Therefore, it doesn't make sense to just kind of part move. So my view is that we will ultimately all transition to the cloud. It will just be a matter of time. So if you have the ability to do that now, particularly as a not-for-profit, you've just got access to some incredible pricing. Office 365 is basically free. You can migrate everything to the cloud at a pretty low price point. So yes, in short, cloud is the way to go. You should be moving from a strategic standpoint, if you're not already there, you should be moving your organization that way, because that's, in 5 years' time, that will be the only way.
Ben asks, do you have any recommendations for large Outlook PST files? Is auto archive the only answer?
Okay, this is very, very technical, Ben. Look, for large PST files, yeah, I would say go to Office 365. You're obviously still going to have your cached OST file, but you can, I would probably archive that off. I don't, in that scenario, PST files to me indicates that you're probably using something like you're popping your emails or something like that. I would say look at Office 365. It's free for not-for-profits anyway. And then, yeah, from an archiving standpoint, just archive off to PST and put that somewhere and save that in storage. Office 365 as well has some archiving features. You have to pay for those though. So if you go with the enterprise version, I think you pay a little bit more. You still pay a discount because you're not for profit, but that gives you automatic archiving, and that might be useful for you too. So maybe have a look at that if that's something that interests you.
Julie asks, can you recommend a company that conducts a review of our current IT provider?
Sure. You could, Julie, you can, yeah, flick me through an email. We might be able to help you with that. If not, we can definitely point you in the right direction. So, you know, we work with a number of different people. It just depends on, you know, size of organization and that sort of thing. And happy to just play independent advisor and not, you know, tender for any services and things like that. Sometimes that's the best way, is to just pay someone to have them look at things objectively and kind of go from there.
And Valeria asks, from what you've explained today, the main management the IT/accounts manager can do is mostly issue management. Is there other tasks or tools for those tasks geared for managers that also do IT project management? Are there any general recommendations, courses that may help understand IT language?
Okay, so it's a pretty broad question, but I'll do my best. So from a project management standpoint, generally speaking, IT companies work off the same project management methodologies as your general project management. So that's PMBOK, PMBOK, PMI is another project management methodology, or Prince2, probably the most common project management methodologies. So if you actually wanted to do something on project management, those would be the areas that I would look at. Those are pretty in-depth though. So I'm not sure what the size of your organization is, but that's for managing multiple projects, quite large projects, and there's a lot of rigor around the project management process. In terms of language, I'd probably say your best bet is there's a couple of very basic courses. A+ is if you Google A+, you'll find that they have some training courses that are geared towards just very entry-level type IT knowledge, and that's probably all you need from a networking, from a IT communication standpoint. There's also an N+, which is by the same company, and that's to do more with networking. So you could have a bit of a look at those. Those are probably the most entry-level ones, short of going and taking like a basic TAFE course or something like that, which you could do, but in my opinion is probably, it's probably not. You're probably just better to set a couple of those online courses, and that'll kind of help you through.
Thanks, Gordon. Last two questions. Corey asks,
okay.
How does an unlimited support plan work in reality? There must be a limit as to what I can expect in terms of service.
Absolutely. So you will. What tends to happen, kind of lifting the curtain and showing you the other side, is the IT company is actually dividing the number of hours that if they're a mature provider, if they're not just you know, 3 or 4 or 5 guys running around fixing computers, they're actually looking at it through the lens of dividing the amount of time that they're spending versus what they're charging. So let's say they're charging you $3,000 a month and you're spending 15 hours a month, they're dividing that to get an effective hourly rate. And that effective hourly rate will obviously be, in this scenario, $200 an hour. So if you're consuming 100 hours and you're only on a $3,000 a month agreement, you're getting your IT support for $30 an hour, and your IT company will know that. The reason why those fixed fee agreements work is because of you're both in alignment about what you're trying to achieve, theoretically, because what you're trying to achieve is you're trying to have as few problems as possible, which means that you're not having to log issues, and your IT company is trying for you to have as few problems as possible so they can actually make money. So there's actually a kind of a win-win outcome there, and so the conversation shouldn't be so much about how much can I squeeze out of my IT provider in terms of hours, but how can I reduce the amount of problems? How can I make the environment more efficient so that the IT company only spends 5 hours a month? The truth is, if you're paying $3,000 and they're only spending 5 hours a month, they're making $600 an hour, but hopefully you're getting the the better outcomes that make that worth it for you. And sure, you could look at it and rationalize it and say, well, I'm paying them $600 an hour and therefore I would stop it. But you could also look at it the other way and say, well, I'm actually paying the $3,000 a month for an outcome, which is for my environment to be running at the peak possible performance and have as few problems as possible. So, that's the dynamic there. But yes, sure, if you're spending 150 hours every month and you're paying $3,000 a month, at some point they will come to you and say, you need to either upgrade or, we need to increase the agreement or whatever, because it's just not economical to provide that support at that level.
Cool. Sue asks, we are a small not-for-profit with many staff logging in remotely to our server. If these staff have an issue, they generally email one staff member to address it. Is there some affordable or free software available that can be loaded on the server for them to request help so everything is logged and recorded?
Yes. So have a look at, it might be a little bit complex, but have a look at Spiceworks is a free help desk software package that might be okay. That's probably your best bet. If you use SharePoint, you can also set up a very simple kind of like issues register / log in SharePoint. I'm not sure if you use SharePoint. If you don't, it's free anyway, so you should definitely get onto that. But you can actually create a list that has IT issues, and they could log that, and then your IT coordinator or the IT provider could update that. Those are probably two ways that might suit within the budget and actually work for you.
And just one last question before we wrap up. Can you please repeat the A+ course training company name for Valeria?
Oh, okay, no worries. I think if you just Google A+, so give me one sec. Let me A+. There you go, CompTIA A+. Have a look at these ones here. These courses will be the basic ones that you can do that will give you a base level understanding, and there's also an N+, I believe, which is a little bit more complex. Oops, the way of the ninja. It's probably not what you're after. CompTIA N+. You can also do the CompTIA N+, but again, this is probably getting a little bit too in detail. You probably don't need this much information at that point. So,
thank you very much, Gordon. So we're a little bit over time, but thank you very much for presenting today. It was there's some really good information in there, and as you said before, if anyone would like those templates, to please email Gordon directly. And his email should be, yep, it's up on the screen at the moment. Other than that, though, we will be sending out a recording and the slides to the webinar within the next 24 hours, so keep an eye out for them. If you do have any questions that might pop up, as soon as we leave here, feel free to either email myself at events@connectingup.org, or if it's okay with Gordon, you can email him. Other than that, though, don't forget to check our website, newsletters, and Facebook for any more upcoming events. Have a good day, everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Tori.
Bye.
Bye.